Hello, and welcome back to Calling for Change, presented by Lincoln Calling and Civic Nebraska. My name is Spencer Munson, Executive Director of Lincoln Calling, and today I'm joined by my co-host and voting rights expert, Brad Christian-Sallis of Civic Nebraska. Hey, Brad, how's it going?
Good. How about you?
Hey, not too bad. Excited to dive into some ballot initiatives tonight. Some of these are really confusing, so I'm excited to talk to you about it.
No, it should. Oh, go ahead.
This is my first time hosting, so bear with me. Let's talk about early voting to start things off. How's that going so far?
The process is going great. A lot of people have been turning in ballots that they requested. So that's awesome. People are remembering to get their ballots in, and people are doing a pretty good job making sure that they're signing their envelope, which is something super important for when you're returning your vote by mail ballot. One thing I did, we kind of discussed bringing up that we just wanted to bring to people's attention tonight, because there is kind of a rise going on in COVID cases right now, is the fact that let's say you didn't request a vote by mail ballot, but you were going in person and now you're sick and you're not feeling great, and you don't want to put other people at risk. How you can still make sure you're able to cast your vote. And what we do have here in Nebraska is the ability for people to have someone go pick up their ballot for them. It's called being an agent, and you can go have someone who loves you, cares about you, is willing to wait in line to get your ballot for you, and you can have them go grab it so that you're still able to vote. So you'll just want to reach out to your local county election official and ask them about the best way for you to go about that process of having an agent pick up your ballot for you. So that's one thing I did want to bring up as we're right here in the middle of getting out the vote, and just we're so close to election, so close to seeing what's going to happen, and so many people have already voted and already used their voice. So that's just another option for voters we want to make sure that you know and are aware of.
Oh, that's super helpful. I know, I signed up to vote in person because the voting booth's literally across the street from my house, but we have had a COVID scare in our household, so we just want to be as safe as possible. So it's nice to know we called up the our county election folks, and they gave us that information today. It was nice to know that, even in the middle of the pandemic, there are lots of options.
Yep, so many options for that, or people just returning their ballot. If you don't know where your drop box is, Civic Nebraska has a great resource where we have a map of every drop box across the state. So definitely, if you have your ballot but you just haven't turned it in yet, go do that. Go to Civic Nebraska, find that link and use it, because we gotta make sure everybody who's requested a ballot and wants to vote in this election is able to vote.
Awesome. Well, let's pick up right off from where we were in last episode. Last episode, we talked about some of our state offices, judges. I encourage you to go back if you're interested in finding out more information. Go back to Lincoln Calling's YouTube or our Facebook and check out last week's, it was about 2 weeks ago y'all discussed that. But there's lots of good information on, especially a lot of those offices that you're not as familiar with. Everybody knows the president. You may know your senators, but sometimes you don't know who your state representatives are on the legislature, who particular judges are. So make sure that you go check out that information too. The area that I personally had a lot of questions about was the initiatives. Let's talk a little bit more about that. What are they?
Yeah, so initiatives are one of my favorite things because they're really a way for the people of Nebraska to directly play a role in our democracy, and really make those decisions ourselves. So what they are, there's really two ways initiatives come about. It'll either come from the process of collecting signatures to put something on the ballot, or the legislature can send something to the ballot. So those are the two ways it gets there. Most things tend to be like, when we think about it, it's collecting signatures is how they come about. So this year there's 3 that will be on the ballot that have to do with gambling, and another one that will have to do with payday lending. And those were all ones that were people collected signatures for. And then there's a couple others that'll be on there that came straight from the legislature. So the amendment 1 that would remove the exception for slavery is one of those that came straight from the legislature. And then another one on TIF funding is straight from the legislature.
So jumping back a little bit, like if I wanted to get something on the ballot, where would I start? And what would I need? How could just the common Joe go about getting something on the ballot?
Yes. So what you would want to do is you would try and craft that language for what you want to put on the ballot. Like, let's say we're going to put a day dedicated to you where it's a paid holiday. We're putting that on the ballot. If you want to do that, you'd craft that language that would say that one thing that you would specifically need to do with that language is it would have to stick to a single issue. So we couldn't make like the day to remember you a paid holiday, and like everybody has to set off fireworks for you. It has to be just one thing. So it could just be the day dedicated to you as a paid holiday. So once you have that, you basically submit your language to the Secretary of State. They'll send you back suggestions, and then you really just collect signatures, and you got to reach 10% of registered voters in Nebraska would have to sign it if it is a constitutional amendment. And then if it's a statute that you want to change, just changing a law, not changing the Constitution, it's 7% of the registered voters in Nebraska. And you have to hit at least 5% across 38 counties. So that kind of also gives it some geographic diversity. So it just can't be one area of a state that wants something.
Sure. What is 10% of our population right now? Do you have an idea off the top of your head?
Oh, I would say I'm really bad at math, so that's tough.
No,
I'm betting it's probably around 100,000 or so.
That's that's a lot of work.
Yeah, and you know, with the signature collection, if someone doesn't, you know, write down the address they're registered to vote at, or you know, they put the name they go by instead of their actual legal name, all those things can get signatures thrown out. So you always have to collect a good chunk more than you actually need, so that you'll be able to actually make the ballot.
So what are some other common challenges that happen when trying to get these ballot initiatives on the docket? We just had one for medical marijuana that was denied. What happened there?
Yeah, that kind of goes back to that single issue that I was talking about. The court ruled that the language in there wasn't a single issue. And really what having that in there does is it can make it harder for things to change, because a lot of times you do need more than a single issue, and what's defined as a single issue is really so much up to whoever is on whoever's deciding that case and making that decision, which is usually going to be Nebraska Supreme Court. So I think the language with marijuana, they've already started collecting new signatures around a real stripped down version of the other one, so that they don't run into that issue. But then you'll also see, like with the gambling initiatives that'll be coming up this year and will be on the ballot, there's 3 different actual initiatives that signatures had to be collected for, so that it wouldn't become this isn't a single issue thing.
do you know what the Supreme Court used as proof to say that there were too many topics on that particular ballot initiative?
You know what? I don't.
Okay.
I would say that I don't really know if I would use like proof as like the right word for the decision. I mean, it's it at the end of the day, it really is when we're talking about legal opinions, they're legal opinions. So a different court with different people could have very well decided something different. I don't know if it really comes down to a matter of proof or not.
Right. Well, so let's dive into these initiatives on the ballot this year. Let's start with Initiative 431, which is, I guess we have kind of three in a row here: 429, 430, and 431. One first, 30 authorizes gambling at racetracks. 29 authorize particular laws for the gambling at the racetracks. And then the third one is a tax. Can you explain those a little bit more in depth?
Yeah, so it's kind of what I was discussing before. Even though you would think that, okay, gambling is going to be, we're adjusting our state laws to allow for this. You would think you could just do it in one piece of language, but you can't. It has to be broken down into those three separate things. And so for each of those things, people have to vote either for or against them. And there's the particular language for each of them. But really, essentially, if you support gambling and would want that here in Nebraska, then you would vote for all three. And then if you were opposed to it, you would vote against for all three. I think that's something, just the nature of it can be confusing for people. Like, I support this or I don't support this. Do I vote for all of these? Do I only vote for some of them? So what we've seen in other states, some states have what is called like a plain language law, where things that are on the ballot just have to be written, not like these are written where it is that more legal language, but when things go to the ballot, they really have to be broken down in a way that anyone can understand it and read it. And that's the direction I would love for things to go here, because it just makes it easier for people.
Right. Well, it seems like, so there's a couple different things I think we should discuss about these bills. You know, there's been some misinformation. There's a couple different ad campaigns, I think, from both sides. It seems like this could be a huge break for property tax. You know, we have, I guess, a legislature, a governor that's for property tax relief, and it seems like that's where all this tax money will go for. These specific bills would allow our racetracks, we have 6 racetracks in the state of Nebraska, to expand their gambling offering. From that, it would, the 430 is making each of those racetracks pay $1 million fee to even expand to start off. And then 20% of all of those revenues will then go into property tax relief. Why isn't this a no-brainer?
I mean, for me, I have no idea why it's not a no-brainer. But yeah, I think really this is partially why I love initiatives so much, is that like, if the people want it, they'll have the chance to get it. And if the people don't want it, they won't vote for it. But I love the idea that it comes down to what the people want and not being focused on politicians and what they want. Because there's some politicians in the state who are very for it, some politicians who are very against it. But the only thing that's really going to matter with this is how the people feel. And that's why I think initiatives are just such an amazing just tool that voters here in Nebraska have that not every state has. There's a good number of states that do not have the initiative process. And so us, especially the citizen-driven ones where there's no like rules on who can create an initiative. It's like, if you have an idea that you believe in enough, are willing to do the work and collect the signatures, you can make it law here in Nebraska. And I love that.
Well, a reminder to everybody that's watching, if you have any questions about these particular initiatives or a question for Brad and I, please shoot those in the comments and we'll address those as possible. I want to go over a little bit. I've been reading a little bit, kind of the for or against for these. And I don't know. I know that we have to keep somewhat bipartisan here, but, some people would argue that Nebraskans spend millions. We're talking between $400 and $500 million a year on out-of-state casinos. So I think the argument is that, if we start creating some sort of gambling, I think within a limited portion that we can keep a lot of that money in the state. I think the argument against it is that we have, a lot of these. Some people would argue that gambling creates more social problems, creates, this sense of addiction to gambling. Have you, read anything for or against as far as, what the problems as far as like social problems that come from gambling, and if, bringing gambling into our state will really send those numbers through the roof?
I haven't read many like studies or anything like that on it. What I do know is that the initiative does set aside some money for people who may end up having issues with gambling. And I think that's a very real thing. So I was really happy looking in this initiative. Like, it does have that some of that money that's going to come from being made, if it passes, goes to help people who may run into those issues.
And so when you're thinking about, potentially voting for this bill, I think that's the research that you should do. See what other states are potentially doing. We have almost every state around us has gambling. We're actually one of the very few states still that does not have gambling of this kind. Iowa, Kansas, Missouri, Colorado, and South Dakota all have gambling. And, they're calling these, I learned a new term. It's called racinos, racetracks that allow casinos. Iowa generates around 20 to 24% of tax revenue. Kansas is a high at 27, while South Dakota is very low at 9. So I'd be interested. I'd like to dive in. I need to do this, but dive in a little bit more on how those states handle some of the social problems and the gambling addiction as well. And it really is interesting to me that, this is something that would create property tax relief, yet, our governor, who's really big on property tax relief, and almost every previous governor before him are very against this bill.
Yeah, I stopped a long time ago trying to make sense of different things like that. It's just that, to me, though, not having to worry about that is the beauty of this.
Too true.
This is with the people now. This is all dependent on us, right. And dependent on how we vote. So his opinion on it is kind of at this point a mute point, because now it's going to the people to be able to make their decision.
All right. Well, I think we've covered all that. Let's go talk on this payday lender interest rate cap. Initiative 428 on the ballot. Can you tell us a little bit more about this one?
Yeah, so what this one really does is just kind of what you said. It's a cap on the interest rate that payday lenders can charge people. So when people are in that position where they need money for whatever reason, and they don't have access to like that traditional credit, where they end up having to go to a payday lender, it just puts a limit on how much they can be charged in interest, which like we know the interest rates on payday lending loans can just be through the roof. So it really just sets some guidelines for it.
And so, correct me if I'm wrong, but these are as astronomically high as 90% on a payday loan. What is it going to cap it at? Do we know that number?
Yeah, I believe it is. One say it's 36%.
36, which still is kind of crazy.
Yeah, yeah, 36. It's really high. So that's kind of what's the beauty of this is like we can not only, get it to the point where it's at 36, but if people want to, go farther than that, there can always be more initiatives and more citizen-driven change. So yeah, that's why initiatives are so cool, because it's all about the people. Like people spent time volunteering, collecting signatures for this because it's something they believe in, and they worked hard enough to get it onto the ballot, and now it'll be there. And if the people in Nebraska agree with them that there should be that limit, then there will be that limit.
Do you know why they came up with this number 36? It just seems like an odd number too. No?
Oh, I do not know where the 36 came from. I'm sure somebody who's much like better with numbers in general, like I'm sure there's a really good reason for it, but I could not tell you. I could not be the one.
Holy cow! One of our viewers actually said that some Lincoln payday lenders were up to 400%. That's crazy. Oh man, that's too bad. I mean, I'm glad. I mean, this seems like a very very valuable ballot initiative, just because, I think a lot of people, especially during COVID, are probably really caught from paycheck to paycheck and are looking for any way to be able to get by. And if they're just, stopping into these payday lenders, needing money quick, but they could get hosed for years and years to come. So this seems like a no-brainer to me. Let's talk about the amendment changes. So this is something that has now come from the legislature, right? So we went from ballot initiatives that came from the people, and now we're looking at a couple amendments that actually came from our Nebraska state legislature. Is that correct?
Yeah. So when things come from the legislature, it'll be for one of two reasons. It'll either be because it's a constitutional change, so the people have to vote on it, or it can be just they don't want to make the decision, so they sent it just to the people in general.
Right. Which is good. I guess I feel like they should be sending more things to the people instead of making the decisions for us. But let's start with, I think, one that you're very passionate about, Nebraska Amendment number 1, removing slavery as a punishment for crime. Can you tell us a little bit more about this one?
Yeah, so Nebraska's constitution, like a lot of states, has a lot of pieces in it that just are just flat out racist, and just come from a racist era. And this is one of those. And it's the idea that there's an exception for slavery. So slavery is banned except as punishment for a crime. What this initiative would do would remove that exception. And so that is one of those where if that's something you support, and if the people in Nebraska decide to support that, they can vote for. And then hopefully there's no one out there trying to support slavery, but then there's that against vote. So this is one of those things where, people can just really stand up and make their voice heard and, say slavery is like not acceptable in any case without exceptions. So that's kind of just the history of it. But I think the big thing is with so many of these initiatives, you can look at the language and it's not really like super easily understandable language. So I do think with all of these things, it's important people know like what it is that they're actually voting on, because knowing that makes a huge difference. In Colorado, a similar initiative to this in 2016 was on their ballot, and it failed by 1% because so many people didn't like understand that they were voting for or against removing an exception for slavery. So that's why just anything you can find on any, whether it's a initiative, whether it's on candidates, anything you can find where you can really do that research and learn more about how your vote, what your vote is going to do when you do it. I always encourage people to do, because that's what's so important to do. Everyone should feel like when they're voting, they have enough resources where it was like they know they made the right decision on what they were voting on. So, right now, a lot of those resources are provided by nonprofits like Civic Nebraska and some of our amazing partners. But I would love to see just more change, just simplifying language on the ballot and just making it really clear to voters what their vote is doing.
Now, is this just, I guess, of course, this seems like a no-brainer, but is this one of many steps towards kind of fixing our prison industrial complex? Is this part of this language? Is if you are a felon or in prison that they can potentially get free labor out of you?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that even simplifies it too much, saying just like the idea of free labor. What this like with, there's not like a limit on it. It would just like there is that allowing for slavery. It's not just like allowing for free labor. It's right. Anything that you could think of that could be like go under slavery as punishment for a crime is acceptable in this language. So that's really what it is. I almost feel like just the idea of it being like just more of a free labor type thing almost sugarcoats it. The language is like just what it says. So it allows for slavery. There is that exception.
Now, is this how on earth is the word slavery in the Nebraska Constitution? Is this something that was put in there when our state was ratified and has just been completely overlooked all these years?
Yeah, so it was actually a pretty like common thing, and it's not just in Nebraska's state constitution. There is still that exception in our national constitution as well. So it's just something that is there from our history, and now people will have a chance to vote on it and make that decision, right. At least here in Nebraska.
Why has this not come up nationally? Has it?
I think it's come up at times, and I know there's some other states as well that have been like working on the issue. I believe Utah is going to be having a similar initiative on their ballot this year in 2020. So it's come up, but it's just so many people look at language like that and don't realize that like if something's legal, chances are somebody's gonna take advantage of it.
Right.
So just I think a lot of people think of it as like, oh, it's so old and slavery is a thing of the past, but it's one of those things where it still is legal.
Right. Well, thank you, Brad. Let's jump to the Second Amendment of the Nebraska Constitution. This is what's called tax increment financing, or TIF financing. And this is an amendment to extend the repayment. Just background for folks. TIF is a particular financing that the state sets aside for development for blighted communities or blighted areas of town. For those of you in Lincoln, I think some various parts. I think we're back. Sorry, we had some technical issues there.
Oh, cool. Yep.
So TIF, this is about extending the repayment program. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
I'd probably let you go into a little more on TIF. Like, I'm not like super great with financial things. I kind of know the basics behind the idea, which you were kind of just saying. I know you were cutting out a little bit, but just the idea that this is intended to support communities who are struggling.
Yeah, so I think the idea is that you lend communities that are struggling, that are blighted, the money to be able to do particular improvements on their various communities, whether it's sidewalks, lighting, various improvements, signage. And then you allow them, as those property taxes go up, because you've fixed the property, you've fixed the sidewalks, you've fixed the neighborhoods, then you then tax the higher property tax, and then you give folks what is currently 15 years to repay that money back. And so my understanding of this amendment is that we are allowing those folks to now have 20 years to repay that back instead of 15 years. So it seems like a great, I mean, all opinions aside, it seems like something that would be really good for our communities. Personally, I know as somebody who, and Lincoln colleague, we kind of work very closely with the downtown area of Lincoln. Over the past 10, 15 years, downtown Lincoln's gone through a number of improvements, but one thing that needs substantial improvement is O Street. And so our city council has recently passed the ability for TIF funds to be used on O Street from, I believe, 9th Street to 22nd Street, which will then help improve the sidewalks, which are in disarray, improve some of the lighting, the signage, the trees, the seating, the whole 9 yards, which will then help raise the property values of all of those storefronts and all of those properties on O Street, which then will also raise the taxes that they're able to pull from those property values, which will then go back to paying these loans for those improvements. And I believe that this, in reading a little bit about this, that this amendment is to give those folks, instead of 15 years, now 20 years to make those payments back. Do you see, I guess, any holes that could hurt the people of Nebraska as far as passing this?
I'm not really super sure. I guess when it comes to bills like this and amendments like this, my usual go-to is to talk to my dad about it. Like, I think everyone should have that go-to person to talk to about different issues. So I'll talk to my dad about things like this. He'll ask me about things like dealing with voting and more social justice issues, because that's definitely where I'm focused. I think anything that is going to be beneficial to communities, especially communities that are struggling. I tend to support, but I definitely know, like, I'm not the person I would want to take advice from on anything to do with like financial things. I'll be the first to admit that. Yeah, I'm still trying to master just like working within a budget. Like,
Yeah. For people that are really trying to do some of their own research, what do you suggest are some of the best places to go?
oh,
Great.
Hey everyone. Looks like Spencer's having a little bit of internet issue. Brad, I'm gonna tee you up with another question while Spencer's working on that.
okay. No, I
could
just wasn't
you-
sure who was frozen, me or him.
No. So can you, with the election about a week away now, talk about some of the resources that Civic Nebraska offers to voters, either on election day or leading up to election day, that they can reach out to you? What type of things can you help them out with? I think we talked about that earlier in the series for Calling for Change, but probably a great time for a reminder.
Yeah, Civic will be doing our election protection program, which is where we send nonpartisan observers to different polling places to be a resource to voters, to make sure no one's getting turned away, to make sure that when everyone is like making their decision and casting their vote on all these important issues we've talked about, that they feel comfortable voting however they feel. And feel free, feel like they're voting free of intimidation. So we have that. We have our election hotline where people can just call. It's even going now, and it'll be going all the way through election day. If you have an issue that you're trying to figure out, whether that's like trying to figure out where your polling place is, whether it's like you spill coffee on your vote by mail ballot and don't know how you cast your vote now. Any of just those questions that may pop up, you can definitely give that number a call, and we can help out with that. And then some of the other resources on our website, at civicnebraska.org, we have a great resource called Election Central, and it's really got anything you could need through election day. So it'll have that list of, that map of all the drop boxes across the state. It'll have a breakdown of like what are your rights as a voter, just all those things that can come in handy, that you might need, or that somebody in your life might need, that you might need to pass along to them and let them know. That's where you can find that.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, we're doing a little bit more stalling to see if Spencer can come back in. I know a big thing on Twitter right now, some of the places that I follow are talking about the overwhelming amount of early voter turnout. Can you speak a little bit more to what Nebraska's early voter turnout has looked like so far? Any things that seem exciting or promising, or are there a lot of outstanding ballots, something that you're taking account of?
Definitely. Well, for me, any ballot that hasn't been turned in is just stressful to me, because I want everybody to make sure they're able to get their vote in on time. So that's a stressful piece, but we've actually been doing great at requesting ballots, and people have been turning them in. I think Nebraska is on its way to record turnout, so it's going to be great to see, and just make sure that if you didn't request vote by mail, that you realize you can still go to your polling place on election day, and you can go vote early in person. So there's still those options, even if you didn't vote by mail. But it looks like a lot of Nebraskans have voted by mail and took the time to do that process. So that's even just exciting to see long term, because The same way, you know, we're heading probably towards record turnout. If Nebraskans start to use vote by mail like this in every election system, we can just have our turnout high all the time, which would be the dream, where everybody's participating at a really high rate just consistently. That's where we'll really start to see politicians and their decisions really reflect how people feel. So we would be less reliant on things like initiatives where people have to come together and decide to you know, work hard for that change. If they have elected officials that they feel like really represent them and represent the majority of the people, then that kind of takes away the need to use those things as much.
Yeah, for sure. And it looks like we have Spencer back, so I'm going to bring him back in, and I'm going to duck back out, and we'll get back to the initiatives. Hey, Spence.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes. I think we've covered all the initiatives. I think we're doing good there. One thing that I wanted to recommend folks to go to is Ballotpedia as well. You can type in your zip code. It'll pull up exactly what your ballot is. Because sometimes I think it's confusing looking up who the judges that you are going to represent or that you get to vote for.
Definitely.
Ahead,
Another great resource for people is the League of Women Voters Vote 411. I always use that resource. The League is one of my favorite organizations, and they give you that information that you need in a nonpartisan way, so you can really make your decision based on what you think and what you believe, but you'll make it in a very educated way. So definitely check out that resource as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Brad, for coming on and discussing all the initiatives with us today. Again, I suggest people, if you're interested in more information about the folks that are on the ballot, tune in to Calling for Change, Decoding the Ballot Part 1. And thank you again for listening. Thank you, Brad. Any last comments before we say goodbye?
Just make sure you vote. Make sure if you have a vote by mail ballot that you take it to a drop box. You cannot take it to your polling place. And if you didn't request vote by mail, go vote on election day and reach out to Civic Nebraska if you have any questions or need any help to make sure that your vote is counted.
All right. Thank you so much, Brad, and have a good night,
Have
folks.
a great one.